That's the big question that I have for you to do with this is, I grew up, you probably heard it, the other podcast, for me, and many people, your dad was like a hero. And because I was living away, I'd come back occasionally on holiday and stuff and see it. And there was like a point at which it seemed that amongst all the siblings, he'd gone from hero to zero. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it because the whole money economic thing was such a slow process of like decades long. I couldn't put my finger on what was it, like it, almost as if each one had their own reason for having that thought. You know, maybe I don't know. It's a common thing, but I'm super curious to know when did your dad go from being the coolest dad that anyone's ever had? Because we all thought that. You know what I mean? And for me, it was like, well, I adored him. To suddenly not that. Well, for you personally.
Well, I mean, I think so. One thing I will say is that I believe he had a very different relationship with each of us.
Right. Okay.
To be honest with you, right? And
He did, yeah.
right? And I think, you know, like, I think he had favorites. I think Teresa was always a favorite. I think I was always a favorite because I was the first, I think, in his mind, right? So I think he was always more forgiving with me than with some of the others. I think he was never forgiving with Albert, and he was never forgiving with Judith. And he's been semi-tolerant of Lucas, right? Just because Lucas sort of came in at the end, and Lucas basically raised himself, right? And so I think he had a very different relationship with each of us. But I think over time, especially in that third phase toward the end, you know, each of us, I think, to a certain extent, got to experience how, in a way, my dad's ego always ended up getting the best of him, right? I think there were certain things he couldn't help himself, right? You know, every time any money came his way or whatever, that money was already kind of spoken for. Like it would sort of disappear very quickly. And then, you know, for me, certainly, it was the famous gift from, Tío Miguel, where for once we had a way out. It's like, for years and years and decades, yes.
Financial, yeah.
Each of us were doing what we could in terms of providing for him and my mom. And then suddenly, Miguel said, okay, enough. And he was probably, clearly he was influenced by his wife's family, who said, look, this guy's a liability. He's a vacuum cleaner. Whatever money goes there, it will be sucked up. So let's protect our wealth. And he said, okay, you know what? We're going to do a one-off gift, a one-off donation to help you out. And, and that was, the sky opened up because like, well, finally, dad has and mom have this kind of resources. They have this pot of money that your great uncle gave dad, your grandpa, to help him out. And that money, we all know what happened to that money. Well, I don't know what happened to all of it, but I know that none of it was wisely spent. Mm-hmm. And, suddenly within months, this cash, and so for me, it was maybe enlightening. Maybe I was the last one to kind of realize this part of my dad, but I have given my personal guarantee to Miguel that we would make sure that this money was not squandered. And we tried until the day your grandfather turned around and said, oh, who are you to manage my money, right? Because what I had insisted that we open an account in Teresa's name and that she administer the funds. And he just pulled a fit and he said, what the fuck? And, you guys are traders. And so I said, okay, you know what?
So was that the moment where it really sort of shifted?
For me, it was, because I said, okay, you know what? Okay.